Hey guys, I'm here with David Liu, who got top 8 at the first regionals we had here in Oceania of the year. I believe it was 7th you got, David?
Seven.
Yeah, playing Kai, so it went X1, 5-1. Only loss was to the eventual winner, Benny. So you did it extremely well, and you are one of our more consistent toppers here in Australia. So I will give you the floor to go over your Kai deck profile.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Max. And yeah, it's good to be back. It's been a while since I played Black. The last Black tournament, the Black deck I played was Gogeta Zeno, went way back towards the start of 2022. So it's been a while. So always been looking for a Black deck. It's always been my style. So when Kai got the new support, it was a no-brainer for me to play the right kind of aggro style that sort of suits me. So yeah, I would just jump straight into the profile. Um, I think first of all, let's go through the leader. It's very simple. On the front side, on attack, burst three, draw one, and then the awaken is four or less, or when you have eight or more cards in the warp. Flip side, whenever you play a battle card with Overwhelm, draw one, return three from warp to drop. Activate main, one black, choose one card, discard it. Play Unison, which I'll go into very shortly. From drop a warp with 6k, with 9k power with one marker on it, so you basically you play the unit from wherever. And then its third effect is activate main, place one card from life to your drop area, so crit life, to place two black battle cards from your warp to your drop area, and then your overarm stick for the turn. So initially, this leader struggled because the crit life was simply too expensive to stick overarms that don't have barrier. So more often than not, these get cleared, and the cost of one life is simply just too expensive. But with the new support, that all changed. It also got very specific support cards that made playing the Z battle card that came with it a lot easier. So without further ado, I'll go through the main deck. So heart and soul of the deck, you've got to play four. Demagogue, the Unison. It's the Unison that allows you to overwhelm twice with Wormhole. So whenever you overwhelm and your leaders are Saiyan only or God, i.e. Kai, you're able to overwhelm twice. Plus one is fairly straightforward. Plus one to put two back, which you'll need for your overwhelms. And the minus three, which I never went into, is to return two overwhelms with 7 cost or less. Basically, you want to stick this guy on the turn that you're looking to overwhelm on. So either it's usually your first attacking turn, you want to get this out to try and hit 8 cards in the warp. And I'll go through why that is so important to hit the 8 cards in the warp as soon as possible for the Awaken. So Demagogue, Unison of choice, can't play less. You must play this card. Now I guess for the more interesting lineup, which a lot of people don't play. Instead of for my small Unison lineup, of the small Overwhelm lineup, it looks as follows. And this will be very different to what most players have typically played. So I played 2 Goten, Fusion Renewed, 4 Trunks, and then 4 Time Regulate, and a single Time Patrol. This is a very different choice to what most players play. I think largely because most people play the Revive Ravager, which is bursts an extra 3 and also gets crit, so it sets you up for the large overwhelm. I prefer this for consistency and also for the super combo, which I played, which is different. So this card, the Goten, you discard to check top 7 to find overwhelm of 2 costs or less, or a Unison with 9k power, i.e. your Unison or this Trunks. So in total, when you discard it, you should have up to 9 targets in your deck. Worst comes to worst, you neg 1 from hand, but sometimes it's actually important for you to hit that critical 6 in your drop to go from 5 to 6. So this searches these 4 and 4 Unison. This Trunks, Thwarting the Dark Empire, is an unconventional pick. It takes the place of Vegeta Revive Ravager for me. Overwhelm 2, if your leader's a Kai, it says double strike. If your leader's a Kai, warp 2 from your deck and then draw 1. So it essentially refunds itself. It is only a 10k, which is a bit problematic, easy to combo out of, but this card is what makes the super combo really good. The Trunks Time Regulator, been around forever. Overwhelm, draw 2, warp 1. Usually you just toss, use the SCR or any other card that can be played from warp in there. So fairly straightforward. The Time Patrol is a flex slot. It's just another one. It's not the Trunks name, which is good for the Goten, which I'll go into later. But again, this is a flex slot. Usually the first card to side out is just to give you more Trunks names so that the Goten will come out easier. fairly unconventional choice, but I felt like playing the Trunks, which essentially refunds you, as opposed to the Ravager, which is a -1 to hand, was just a bit stronger. And I think going into the super combo, the Trunks is where it really shines. So instead of playing Prince Strikes Back, which is the bottom deck, to draw 2, I play Son Goten Time Patrol's Charity. So this super combo is when you have 5 or more cards in Warp, draw a card. So it's a 10k, draw a card. And this is really important in your early games. We see a lot of decks that are either really stally, like the Beerus, sometimes also Golden Freezer, that don't swing at you, keeping you at life above 4. And sometimes against decks like Sin, where they're trying to take you down from 6 to 4 with their double strike. You just can't defend against it. 20k, you're not comboing 3 cards out. It's just too much loss of value. But this card, if you set it up correctly, which you usually do on your first attacking turn, allows you to super combo straight away. So when you overwhelm the Trunks, you overwhelm the 3 that the Kai's put in, and then you put 2 into the warp, you automatically have 5, and this card is automatically live. So what I would typically do would be to do the first overwhelm with any of these Trunks, play it out, lead a swing, opponent takes 1, Trunks swings, opponent's down on 6, and then I drop Trunks thwarting the Dark Empire. When you swing 10 double, no one thinks about negating it or blocking it. They just go, great, 1 card combo out, he's not comboing on it, and then you put the super combo behind it, it immediately turns into 10 double, 20 double. And for an unawakened leader whose deck probably runs a bottom deck super combo isn't live, they have to take that, also losing 3 cards. So this gave me a lot of early game pressure and also a lot of early game defense.
Yeah, so just quickly with your super combo choice. Most, I guess, black decks use the Vegeta to have access to Gogeta thwarting. Does that mean, I guess, the assumption you're not playing thwarting?
No thwarting in this deck. It sounds very blasphemous. I love thwarting as a card. It also won me Nationals in 21, but this deck, I cut it. It's only at 1. It's strong, but to build a whole super combo engine around it just doesn't make sense to me. So in this build, I actually cut it, which is kind of blasphemous. I do think that with the new promo pack and the Vegeta overwhelm, thwarting can come back. But for this particular build, before that card, just didn't see a place for it. Strong, but you're never tapping 1 energy for its overwhelm, so it didn't have a place in this deck.
Yeah, fair enough.
And this brings on me to Goku. Normally people play 4 of this Goku, counter Goku. You're never using its active main effect because it's only check top 5 and you only have a couple of targets. In this deck, I only use this for the counter effect. It never came up for me. The overwhelm never came up for me either. It's always a backup overwhelm. Most people play 4 because you need the 4 and 4 for Prince Strikes Back. But again, I don't play the thwarting, so I had it 2. Didn't need to have more or less. It sort of worked out fine, but never really came up for me. Onto the bigger overwhelm, so 6 drops. Beyond All Limits grabs anything back. You have to play 4. Again, this card just glues the deck together. It's usually the first overwhelm that you play when you have the 6 in warp, and then that sets up whatever card you want to follow up with for that turn. So you can grab back pretty much anything in the deck that's not your SCR. So a 4 of is must here. The new Dash Pack support cards, Goten and Trunks. This Goten is incredibly snapped. It's essentially a thwarting that draws 1 but doesn't warp on attack. So you can either overwhelm it, which is very standard. When you overwhelm, you draw 1. So again, you refund the card you play. What I want to hone in on is the activate main. Limit 1 for 1 black. If your leader's a Kai, you can play this from hand or warp. If you have a Trunks Xeno on board and 2 or more energy. So earlier, all of the cards I played were Trunks Xeno. So my Goten is always live, effectively always live. I play a total of 13 Trunks Xeno cards, 4 being this one, which I'll go into in a bit, but also 7 of the small ones. So quite often on turn 2, I would finish my overwhelms, and this guy would always come out from warp or hand, which is incredible pressure when you're going first 2 energy. This can take your opponent down from 8 to 2 if they're not comboing out. So got to play 4. It does a lot for the deck in terms of just power. one energy double strike draw one, or one energy double strike that comes from the warp is just too consistent, and you definitely want to play the trunks to maximize consistency. If you don't play the smaller trunks, you only have 8 targets. So I felt this card I always wanted to be seeing, always wanted to be playing. When you tap the one black, it's not an overarm, it sticks on the board. So super sticky and just strong. This trunks has seen a lot of debate. I initially didn't like this card. I thought, look, you can play a lot more for the overarm 6. But what you realize is that the combo from warp into Z is very critical for how your overarm turns get set up. Sometimes when you overarm and you're starting a turn, you don't have anything in warp, in drop. You sometimes want to just move the Z energy to the drop, and it gives you the 2 you need. So this is actually exceptionally good for playing out your Z battle cards, which glues the deck together. And I'll talk to the pan in a bit. The pan needs 2 Z energy, of which this card provides. Normally, you don't want to be coming from hand because it's a -1, especially in the early game, but this card actually does quite a lot for the deck. Also has some cool interactions with when you get riposted, when you attack, you rest something. This actually stands, so whenever you tap on something else, you can actually re-rest this. It's just a weird interaction that sometimes comes in clutch, but you've got to play 4 of these. Was thinking of cutting it down, but after realizing with the interaction, it's pretty critical. Fresh off the ban list, Secret Identity, I think it's still just the default overall. Clears tokens like nothing else, clears big boards. I think playing 2 was fine for me. Didn't really need to see more.
I do
Tenacious, sorry, go on.
I do quickly have to ask, did Alan steal the foil secret identities?
Yes, he stole the judge ones. He would not let go of the judge ones.
Sounds like a good brother.
Yes, he always has first dibs as the better placed player last year. Tenacious, I played 2 Tenacious. Again, Kai doesn't have any floodgates. So Tenacious is your battle card floodgate. With the turns I saw it really worked. I think any black deck needs to be careful around when you could get killed. So you just got to time this correctly. Drop it too early, it doesn't have an effect intended. Drop it too late, it's too late for you. So Tenacious, you can always see with your Beyond Limits. So if you mill it or if you send it to the warp earlier, you can always recover it. You've got to play at least one of these cards. I played 2 just to make sure I saw it at the times I needed, because there were times where super aggro decks can really just blow you out. The one of Dark Rolly, I mean, it's a overarm 6 just to warp 1. If you really have no plays and you brick entirely, you can always just tap 2, play from warp. It's never an ideal play, but it's an option. So I always like to have this at 1. This might go out when Vegeta comes in, but for now, I thought it was quite helpful. It's good for spot removal. The 3 Belligerent, a lot of people like to play Belligerent a lot earlier because of the crit, warp 2. I felt this was just a good utility card. Initially I had this at 2, which a lot of people will think is a bit irregular. Most play at 4. I thought it still costs 1, and I think for this deck you can do a lot with your 1 energy. So 1 energy for a remove 2 only makes sense if there are Z battle cards or SCRs that just leave the board. Its effect shouldn't be underestimated. When you play it, you can remove 2 things. It can be blocker, can be tokens. Blocker tokens, can be Z battle cards, can be SCRs. I think it comes in clutch. Again, can be tutored out with Beyond All Limits. So overall, just super solid card. Again, it also sticks on the board. It's on overarm. Combo SCR, probably the strongest SCR black can play right now. Tap 2, warp something with barrier, and you crit a life and play something from the other side. For this deck, I typically like to throw it into warp with the Trunks time regulator. If I draw 2, put this into warp, you can play it from warp, which is great. More often than not, you always see this card, you'll probably mill it or draw it. So seeing this is fairly consistent. Tapping 2 feels expensive, but the effect it has when it steals opponent's battle cards means that their first auto activates on your side. So if you get robotic posted and this is on the board, you actually gain that effect. So if you so choose to, you pay the cost. So it's a neat interaction that actually forces your opponent to play a little bit weird. They can't floodgate you straight away because you get the first floodgate. For yellow, it's actually less relevant because when you play this, they can just play the Vegeta, which is an 8 cost when it hits the board. So the effect just fizzles out, unfortunately. So it's still very strong. No reason not to play this SCR. My favorite card of the deck that's not a Saiyan, Koitsukai, is just too strong, especially in aggro decks when your opponent's trying to floodgate you. When your opponent has one open, it's very telegraphed that it's going to be a floodgate for the turn. Most floodgates are 4 cost or less, and Koitsukai effectively hits all of them. There's, I think, very few that it doesn't hit, which I believe is full power counter that A21 plays, but I also have a card for that. It's tap 1, bottom deck to fix your hand, filter 2, and then anything with 20k or less, your opponent has to warp 2. So more often than not, when you have an established board, you play Koitsukai, it gets very expensive to counter out of it, to activate block on the gates. Warp 2 is very expensive, so this is just super strong. And I also play one in the sideboard, which I'll go into in a bit. A must-have against yellow.
I think the only other Floodgate-ish card that avoids Koitsukai is that new Sin promo we're getting, but I believe your other card that you're talking about that stops 21 will also stop that Sin promo.
Yes, it's a very specific card, which I think will only get better. The one, Gohan Rare, this card, I never played it for the Z charge effect. I think when it's in the warp, and you have 4 or less life, you can. It's not a counter, so I think the timing is a little bit different. You can essentially add a card from your life, play this card from your hand to the bottom of the deck, so crit 1 effectively to play inside rest mode, and it blocks an attack. So if you see a telegraph triple strike or a double strike, and you're on 2 life or 3 life, you can just pull this out of your warp and crit a life, and the attack gets negated. So it's good for emergency. It makes your opponent have to think when they try and go all in on the double strike. I think it's good utility to have 1. Some people play 2, but I thought 1 was more than enough, especially because you're milling quite a bit. The 3 kind negate needs no explanation. It's your value negate. It's always live because turn 1 you have turn 1, turn 2, first attacking turn should have 8 cards in warp. Negate, warp something. Opponent just has to be aware of it. It punishes people that sequence badly against good players. It doesn't really do anything. It's just a negate and a free body in the board. But more often than not with established boards, they have to respect this because they lose 2 attacks for 1 energy. And also removes Z battle cards too. 3 block negates. Yes, they are all judge. Thank you, Alan. But nothing special there. So I think this is just very standard. And then the 2 of counter plays, which are very different, which again, I think most people play Super Kamehameha, relevant because if you're at 4 or less, stack the Super Combo, Rebellion Hammer can be played regardless of life, so it doesn't matter. So what it does, cost 2, counter play, if leader's black, you warp 3, and then you counter play a 4 cost or less. And as a permanent says, if you have 12 or more black battle cards, 12 or more black cards in your warp, reduces cost by 1. So essentially, it's a 1 energy. You send 3 from your drop to your warp, and you can counterplay a 4 cost. So this is relevant in, I think, the current meta. You should be having 12 cards in your warp by turn 3, turn 4. Again, it can hit cards like full power counter, that the 21 deck is the 4 cost. It can hit the Sin as well. It can do a lot that your opponent won't expect. It's ready to rumble if that's even relevant. But essentially 4 costs means that you have a bit more room to hit. A lot of the counters are 3, but so in select circumstances, Rebellion Ham actually makes a lot of sense. You don't need a life count, so you can stay on 5, 6 life and still happily counterplay it where need be. Came up for me a bunch of times against yellow. I also play another one on the side. You just have to make sure that you have 12 in the warp, because often you are shifting between warp and drop, so keeping a count on that is really important. But for 1 energy, it's just really strong. Again, you've just got to make sure that your activation condition is correct. It is quite strict because you need to have 3 no drop as well. If you don't have that, then you can't play this card. So it is a bit tricky to activate, but I think the payoffs are worth it, given that we are seeing a lot of powerful 4 drops come in. You can counterplay Gohan, the red Gohan that got introduced. You can counterplay a lot of things that I think recently dropped that are very strong, that all happen to be 4 cost miraculously. So I think this card has been slept on for a lot. Its activation condition is quite tricky. It only can be really played from heavy decks. but I think Kai is the best candidate for that, especially with all the trunks that you're playing. Usually you're sitting at well over 12 cards in your war. So that's the main deck. Going on to the battle cards, the one Vegeta, the Boo, and the Pan. I mean, I think this shouldn't come as a surprise. Some people like to play one less Pan and the Goku Xeno. Thought 3-3-1 was fine. If you ever need a Self-Awaken or Filter, so this can come up. I've never had this come up. It's probably something that could change in the future. These just super strong. Boo is just 5k. It's a blocker, 1 Z energy to essentially suck up a card. So it removes essentially any non-barrier threat and turns to 25k. So it can just be attacker. Actually finished one of my games with this guy. Pan is another dash pack support card, which is super strong. 2 Z energy, which is why the Trunks challenging the Dark Empire is important. So because it gets 2 Z energy for free. You has 2 effects. Whenever you use the leader's crit life to stick the Overwhelm effect, you regain that life. And on top of that, the activate main, limit 1, bond 3. If you have 3 Xeno cards, you can just choose and warp a battle card on your opponent's side. So great for clearing blockers and tokens alike. So super strong. This deck keeps you healthy and also keeps your overarm alive. Sometimes against yellow, I keep this in active mode just so that they can't hit it sometimes. Yellow can only kill rest mode cards, so more often than not, this would stay in active mode. And its effect just gets you value because you're dropping to 25 or 30k a turn. And if they stick, that gets quite terrifying, so it scales very strongly. So that's the Z deck. No surprises there. For side, we'll go through the cards I already played. Koitsukai one more. Valiant Hammer, we've seen already. The 2 Smoke, just for slower matchups where unisons need to be cleared. So against Gamma, this would go in. Against Alan's Babidi deck, this is your only efficient out to their Boo. Honestly, I think never really sided it in this particular tournament, but in certain blue matchups, this is actually quite strong just to remove a specific threat. So just at 2, always a strong sideboard card. And if worst comes to worst, you can always mill 2, mill 3 with one of its effects. So it's not that bad. I only have a single Ghost Warriors. I actually should have 2, but I couldn't find my other one. This is against the blue decks that like to activate main to untap. So it just taxes the turn player. Didn't come up for me. I didn't play any blue this game, so this just had my extra deck. It's just at my side. Fully unleashed, just hits the big cards. Again, didn't come up. The one Oceanus for more grinding the gate based, grinding matchups, finding the gates. You can recycle this with Beyond the Limits. It didn't come up for me, but I think in certain matchups, maybe it would have been relevant, but I didn't see it. Gotta respect hand control green if it ever came up. It didn't come up. My brother always tells me to side this because he's a green player. Enough said. Changing history. Your answer to blue. So barrier, cantrip. Helpful, but didn't come up. No blue. What I will touch on is this card, which has been quite spicy. So the minus energy Powerball. It's counterattack if you have a unison. You can activate this for free, and you get to hit one of your opponent's barrier cards, ignoring barrier with 15k or less. And I believe you warp it. So this is a free counter of sorts. It doesn't target the attacking card, meaning that you can actually hit things like Rush Attack Vegeta if it swings, or you can hit cards that have barrier that your opponent, because your opponent doesn't expect this card. Sometimes this can just kill the Rush Attacks, kill the Beerus Area Annihilator on attack, so they don't get their value, because all your energy costs are cheated up for higher than your energy costs, so your Orums will typically die. If they drop the Beerus and they swing 3 times, you lose 3 cards. This just blows the Beerus on the first swing. You will still lose the first battle card, but then they lose the Beerus they played for 2 Z and 2 blue. So it's a good value card to clear blue. The secondary effect is active Battle of Main. Tap 1 to gain 15k. So if you ever need to go in, actually go for game. It actually just doubles up its combo power. And last card is Protector. I mean, I think I just filled space. I think an extra card in the gate for SS4, which actually came out in my first match. Didn't really play it. just another extra card to get in case it came up, but it wasn't relevant. So yeah, that's the deck profile. I think Kai is an exceptionally strong deck going to this format. It hits hard, it hits fast. I would say that it has some weaknesses around its sort of defensive capabilities, which is why I want to stay on High Life earlier on when you can combo out of those attacks. Being at 4 is just a little bit too scary for a deck that doesn't run hard floodgates like some of the other decks. So those were the reasons for why I chose what I chose.
Yeah, well, congratulations, man. You obviously did extremely well getting top 8, which is probably one of our more stacked regionals we've had over the recent times. Just looking at our top 8 and the number of well known players, at least within our local Australian community, who've done well. So, huge congratulations are in order. Is there any shout outs that you'd like to give before we finish this up?
Uh, Probably my brother, who again curated a lot of this and put me on the Gohan and the Trunks. He's a value player. He was also just exceptionally strong, probably one of the strongest in Oz. Um, I get my butt kicked at home all the time, which is why I've become semi decent. But the Goten and the Trunks, the little Goten and the little Trunks, are both his idea, as well as Rebellion Hammer. So I think all these creative texts that no one else plays are primarily due to him. So I've got to give credit where credit's due.
Yeah, well, fair enough. Thanks a bunch for doing this with me, David. And hopefully, after some more originals, we'll get you back on again.
Thanks for having me, Max.
All right, see you guys. Have a good one. Bye.